Please take your seats. The program will begin momentarily. Please welcome The Atlantic's Tyler Watson.
Good afternoon. My name's Tyler Watson. I'm the Executive Vice President of Marketing here at The Atlantic, and we're thrilled that you all have joined us for the big story, Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is a well-known phrase from the Declaration of Independence. But what do those words mean for today's constantly evolving world? Over the next hour, we'll explore how art illuminates complexities of American identity with Emmy Award-winning writer, director, and producer Noah Hawley. We'll hear from Atlantic's Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, Caitlin Dickerson, and renowned photographer, Lynsey Addario, about their shared experience of trekking the 70 miles between the jungles of Colombia and Panama, and its journey that 800,000 migrants will make this year in search of liberty. And we'll hear from best-selling author and Atlantic contributing writer Arthur C. Brooks about the endless pursuit of happiness, as well as how to apply the science of happiness to build a more meaningful life. We hope you'll be moved and challenged by this afternoon's conversations. We encourage you to share your thoughts on social media using the hashtag TAP24. Thank you again for joining us. Enjoy the show.
Here to discuss capturing the complexities of American identity, please welcome filmmaker and storyteller Noah Hawley. Here to lead the conversation is Atlantic contributor Evan Smith.
All right. Good. Good afternoon. How you doing? Noah, good to see you.
You too.
So let's set the stage for everybody. You are the creator and showrunner of Fargo.
Yes.
This is an excellent television program that has been nominated for 70 Emmys over the 5 seasons it's been on, and as of this week, 7 Emmy Awards, won one on this weekend, right?
Yes, but still the worst idea anyone's ever had for a television show.
Is that right?
To try to adapt the Coen Brothers movie seemed like an act of insanity.
Well, I want to come back to the origin story of Fargo here in a little bit, but I want to start with what we're supposed to be talking about, at least nominally, which is the idea that your narratives illuminate the complexities of the American identity. Do you accept that premise? Is that what you do? Is that what you set out to do?
Well, I don't know if it's what I set out to do necessarily, but it's certainly over the last 5 or 6 years become a larger part of my journey in exploring this great American experiment we're all engaged in. And you know, the show has always been about basically decent people who are probably in over their heads, and what they're fighting against is the forces of cynicism and corruption. And you know, there's been an inverse rise of the forces of cynicism and corruption since I started the show, and so I've had to deal with it a little more directly.
And decency is on the outs.
Well,
right?
I don't think so, but I think it's certainly getting given a run for its money at this point.
Yeah. So in an Atlantic essay that you wrote in December of 22, you actually talked about pitching Fargo to the network.
Yes.
And this is what you said. It's the story of the people we long to be. Decent, loyal, kind, versus the people we fear the most, cynical and violent. I thought when I read that at the time, good versus evil, oldest story in the world. Certainly appropriate to the times we're in, but then you went on to say this vision of Americans is, of course, a myth.
Yeah.
Explain.
Well, what I was talking about in that piece is the myths that we tell ourselves about what being an American is, right? And you know, whether it's I talk in the piece about why are they putting Trump's face on Rambo, right? Why Rambo specifically, except that Rambo is this myth of the reluctant hero, right? Like, I don't want violence, but if you push me, you know, I'm going to rise to the moment. And it's a very cowboy idea about America, and one that I engaged with this year kind of directly with John Hamm's sheriff, constitutional sheriff character, and the idea that in that show what you had was law enforcement versus law enforcement, right? You had a man who thought that he was the law versus a system of justice.
I'll note the system of justice won the Emmy.
The system of justice did win the Emmy. I mean, it was very important to me that be true, that the system of justice won in the end, because I think on either side you can't have a cult of personality. No one person can be the decider. You need a very unglamorous system of government, which we find here in D.C. as I walk around past the departments of agriculture and commerce. I mean, it's unglamorous, but that's how a country runs, is people showing up to work every morning and doing their jobs.
Yeah. So the theory of the case, as you articulated it, was before season 1, right? That was before season 1 when you pitched this to the network. You're now 5 seasons in. Is the story you've actually told us a different story? Or is it still fundamentally that same story? It's
the same story. I mean, I suppose if I say that, it's like, well, why keep watching it? It's the same story. But, but I think that the challenge is a complex one. And what I found starting around the 3rd year was that the language of America itself was being corrupted. You know, what I mean when I say freedom versus what you mean when you say freedom, right?
Yeah.
And this idea that the arrival of alternative facts, which now seems so long ago, but is still, we have these conversations about saving democracy. They're having the same conversation. They're saving democracy from the Democrats. We're saving the democracy from the Republicans. What does that actually mean anymore? And I think that's the danger, is once the words stop.
Yeah.
I mean, what a free and fair election was in Russia, right? Which was, you walk in, they hand you a ballot, it's already filled out, you put it in the box, and they call that a free and fair election. So when you try to change the system, you don't have words to describe what an election should be, because those words have been taken.
Right. Well, fair and balanced used to mean something, and now it means something actually very, very different. It occurs to me that the way you structured this show is part of the magic of it. You didn't give us a story that began with episode 1, season 1, and now we are at the end of a 5th season, same characters, same plot, and all that.
Right.
You created an anthology series. Every season is its own discrete story with discrete characters and choices on actors. That gives you a little bit more freedom and flexibility to pivot within the life of the series and respond to the ways in which America changes, and therefore storytelling about America changes.
Yeah, there's this sort of constant at the heart of it, which is the line from the original film, which goes, and here you are, and it's a beautiful day, and for what? A little bit of money, right? The show always engages with what people do for money, and the different iterations of how capitalism creates its own, the death of the sort of structure, because people are desperate for money, people are greedy, et cetera, et cetera. And so, this year I dealt heavily with debt as a theme, something that most Americans carry, and that has a morality that's tied to it.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to explore that aspect of crime as well.
It has not, in retrospect, been a mistake for you to structure the series that way. I mean, let's be honest, this is a non-traditional way to think about an episodic television series, is to do it season by season, different characters, different story. This was a good decision in the end.
It worked out. Yeah, I mean, I started as a novelist, and I still write novels, and I start a story and I end a story, and then I move on to a new story. And other than the show that I made called Legion, which ran 3 seasons, and it was a continuing story. I think the ending of a story is what gives it meaning, and so if you don't know how it ends, you can't really tell it. And so to have a finite story with 10 hours to it, you can really kind of create this, permanent object.
Yeah. Now, the structure of Fargo, this anthology series idea, is part of its success, but there are other things about the show that I think, to me at least, enhance its success in telling stories. The geography of this series is essential. The geography is as much a character as it is in any other show that you could possibly watch. Talk about that. And in some respects, that's an outgrowth of the original, right?
Yeah, this region that Joel and Ethan Coen call Siberia with family restaurants, it's, you know, it was very much seminal to the first idea of it, which is a sort of civilized man wanders out into the wilderness, and what does he bring back with him? And there is that kind of runner in the Coen brothers movies. In general, these sort of elemental figures, the Lone Biker, the Apocalypse, or Anton Chigurh, and this idea that Martin Freeman basically meets Billy Bob in an emergency room and is introduced to the incivility, the ideas that why do you have to follow the rules? Why do you have to be nice to people? Who says you have to be respectful of people? Who says you have to, you know, keep it all inside? And he's sort of liberated quite darkly by that. And I think a lot of it does have to do with, this is a big country, right? People get lost in this country. The whole idea of the lone gunman is often rooted in just the fact that we get lost in this country. You can go from miles and miles and days and find yourself increasingly isolated. And the weather, the winter plays a real part in it as well. There's something very hostile about, you know, trying to survive in those climates, in those moments. And yet I think it brings, you know, people obviously, you would think, right? You ride in on the wagon the first day, it's a beautiful spring day. You know, you have a great spring, a great summer, winter comes, you survive it. May 1st, you're like, okay, moving on, but people didn't do that. They've stayed, and it builds a certain character, I feel like.
Yeah. I think as geography is essential to the success of the show, so has casting been, and anybody who creates a television show would probably say, oh, casting is important, but I think your eye for who should be in which roles and which seasons has been particularly good. Let's take this last season, Jon Hamm and Juno Temple, who we knew from other roles.
Yeah.
Right? I said this to you the other day, that, you know, Juno Temple we knew from Ted Lasso primarily, maybe almost only, and she was this extraordinary figure in Ted Lasso, and you made her ordinary in this show. Jon Hamm, who is everybody's every man in every other thing, ordinary, you made extraordinary in this case.
Yeah.
Like, I think what you did with these two as leads really was the propelling force of this season.
Well, John has this quintessential Americanness to him. I mean, maybe more than any other actor that I can think of. He just feels American, right? I mean, he's a St. Louis guy and baseball player, and he just has this Americanness to him. But, you know, I said, look, it's a character part. It's not Handsome on a Horse, right? It's a character role in which you're going to go to some dark places, and you know, he was certainly game for that. And, you know, he put on some pounds to add some menace, and also some ordinariness. It's not superhero pounds. It's the same pounds you and I put on.
But the idea of him is that supremely evil figure is just not something that we're necessarily used to associating with him.
Well, the other thing that I understood, right, is that for a not insignificant portion of the country, he's the protagonist, right? The way he thinks about the world, the way he interacts with the world, you know, resonates with a lot of people in a very sort of Yellowstone kind of way, right? And you know, and for Juno, you know, this is a woman who you know, has to defend her home and herself from John and these forces that are coming for her, at the same time while denying to her family that any of it is happening, which is not the best mother quality that one might have. But I knew that you know, Juno has this mischievousness, this playfulness, this joy, to use a word that is now rightfully so everywhere. You know, that where you were going to think she was a good mom, right? And what I liked about her is that she was teaching her daughter to be prepared without teaching her to be afraid, which I think was critical. Yeah.
And then, of course, I've said this to you a million times, but Jennifer Jason Leigh stole the show during the entire season, right? I mean, that rich lady lockjaw accent of hers was one for the books.
You know, she said, what should I look at? Any role models? I said William F. Buckley. What I didn't mean was show up.
Literally.
Like
in the
William
way
F.
of
Buckley.
Right, yeah.
But I wasn't unpleased that she did.
Yeah. Let me step back from this season, and maybe even from this series, and ask you if TV is the best way to tell stories these days. Obviously, TV has undergone an extraordinary transformation. The distribution of television has been a major part of that.
Yeah.
TV is the new movies, as they say. Is this the best medium for you?
Well, it's interesting. I was looking at some numbers today. You know, Netflix is announcing what people are watching on there, and 72% of people watch television, and 27% of people watch films on Netflix, right? So that shows you that the amount that people want to invest in long-form storytelling. They want something that's multiple hours, that they can invest in multiple seasons, you know. But I certainly think, you know, there are and will continue to be great movies that take on big themes and do things that you can't necessarily do in long-form television. But if you want to really engage thematically or with ideas and character and story, you know, it really helps to have a lot of runway. And what I like to do is to have a lot of points of view, because I think that enhances a story. You know, you got John Hamm's point of view, right? He wasn't just the villain on one side of the room. And so I think that, you know, Fargo is always a lot of moving pieces on a collision course, and you don't know which ones are going to collide and when. And, you know, there's going to be violence, right? But when the violence comes, I never want it to be entertainment. I always want you to feel a little bit like, oh, I thought I wanted this, but now I'm unsettled by it.
Yeah. And, you know, the conventional television shtick was with limitations, right? It always came with some limitations of time, limitations of standards, what you could and could not do. This is really the Wild West in terms of I mean, you're not totally unlimited, but certainly you have a lot more freedom today in the way you tell stories, length of time, length of story told, way in which the story is told than you would have in the traditional television universe.
Yeah, although I think that, you know, that was more true in 2018 or 2019. I mean, I think we sort of had what my boss John Landgraf calls peak TV, and that meant both in its scope and scale, but also its experimental nature. And, you know, certainly season 4 of Fargo, I had a lot of 65-minute episodes, and this year there's nothing longer than 44 minutes. But that was my own instinct that, you know, people they want you to get to the point. You know, I tried to make concentrated Fargo this time, right? It wasn't about, like, what else can I do with the show? It was like a great story well told was my goal.
And I could just tell you one viewer's point of view, I didn't feel cheated by the shorter episode.
No, it's good. You know, it's good. If, you know, if you're 100% engaged, then you feel like you've had the experience.
You alluded to the fact that you're a novelist as well as a creator of great television, and that you've also made films. 6 novels. First one was published 26 years ago, right? Conspiracy of Tall Men.
Yeah.
Then last one was in 2022, Anthem. I must say, it was its own very good vehicle for telling stories. You know, the crazy and the chaos and the obliteration of guardrails, the new abnormal that we see out in the world, you kind of got perfectly in that novel 2 years ago.
Right. I mean, I got to Civil War before January 6th, and then on January 6th was, you know, it's scary to sort of hit a moment,
right,
theoretically, and then see it unfold.
You'd rather be wrong.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'd rather be wrong about things like that. So, but yeah, I mean, the novel, you know, for everyone saying it's dead, it remains to be reborn every decade or so with, you know, with both a great character story, but also you can really go deep thematically and idea-wise in a novel in a way that it's harder in filmed entertainment, because filmed entertainment is not concerned with the interior states of characters. It's what do they do and what do they say.
Right. It occurs to me, whether it's novels or TV, that one challenge for someone like you today must be this truth is stranger than fiction aspect of the world we're in. How do you create a fictional world that is any more absurd than a presidential candidate standing on stage in front of 60 million people saying they're eating the dogs?
Right.
Right? I mean, how do you top that? If you submitted that as part of a novel to book publishing, they would reject it as too absurd for fiction, as fiction, right?
Well, look, you know, for me, I'm always trying to say, all right, well, this is an idea that I want to explore, and how do I turn it into story? So, you know, in the third year of Fargo, I really wanted to engage with this idea, this thing we say at the beginning of every episode, which is this is a true story, right? And this world of alternative facts and your reality and my reality, right? And you know, I was telling this story about one brother named Stussy who tries to steal something from the other brother named Stussy, and the doofus goes to the wrong town and kills a third guy named Stussy, right? And so that was the premise, that started it. And then one of the brothers dies, and now you have two dead Stussys, and the villain goes, well, if we kill one more, and we find a guy to confess, then we can say there's a serial killer out there who hates people named Stussy.
Stussy, right, exactly.
Right? And so, and then you get that guy to confess, and he gets convicted, and he goes to jail, and now that's a fact, right? That is the historical record that there was a guy who hated people named Stussy. It's not true, but it's a fact.
It's a fact.
Yeah. And so that's, you know, this year I had, you know, John Hamm is running for re-election as sheriff, and Jennifer Jason Leigh, they come up with this plan where they're just going to find 3 other guys and have them legally change their name to Roy Tillman, and they're going to stand up on the stage with him, and when you go in to vote for Roy Tillman, you've got a 1 in 4 chance of voting for the right
one,
Roy Tillman, right?
Right.
Now, this was a true story out of Russia, as a lot of these great stories are.
Yeah.
You know, they sort of break that ground on the absurdity of it. But you really, you know, on some level, you can't make this stuff up because, especially if you have lag time between when you film it and when you air it, reality might catch up with you.
Totally. So we're running toward the bottom here. Quickly, tell us the story of how Fargo came to be. Whose idea was it to create a television show from the film?
Well, a lot of the way that things get made, right, is that movie studios, they look at their libraries, right, and they go, oh, we got 3 Days of the Condor, or we got Star Wars, or we got whatever, and they say, what can we do with this to make more money? Which, unfortunately, is what a lot of us are doing here on the earth, is we're just moving the money around, right?
Right.
And so MGM had Fargo, and they called FX and said, what would you do with Fargo? And FX said, we'd love to do that. And then they came to me, and they said, you know, we're thinking of doing Fargo as a TV show, but we're wondering, can you do it without Marge? Can you do it without Frances McDormand? Because you're never going to do better than Frances McDormand. And I thought, well, that's just a really odd thing to ask somebody to do, right? Which is like, Macy's in jail, right? Everyone else is dead. Without Frances McDormand, you're not telling the story of the movie. You're just trying to make a Coen Brothers movie that feels like Fargo, but has nothing to do on some level with Fargo. And that seemed really interesting to me. And I said, but it's not a TV show, because the way the movie ends, you know, she's seen the weirdest case she'll ever see, and tomorrow's a normal day. And if we wake up in season 2 and continue the story, you can't say it's a true story anymore. And luckily, they were on board for that.
And that's how it becomes an anthology, indeed.
Yes.
So before we go, Alien Earth.
Yes.
Next series you've created based on the extraordinary global film franchise.
Yes.
We will see beginning next year.
Less funny.
Less funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll be illuminating the, what was the phrase that we used at the beginning? You're going to be illuminating the complexities of the xenomorph identity.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, what I can say about that is, you know, those movies are 2-hour survival stories, right? But if you're going to tell a story that lasts 20 or 30 or 50 hours, you got to do more than that. And so, you know, it's really an exploration of what is humanity in the face of the AI future and the primordial parasitic past, and can we and do we deserve to survive? So, you know, but a lot of running.
A lot of running.
Yeah, a lot of running.
Good. All right. Can't wait. Please give Noah Hawley a big hand. We're out of time. Thank you very much. All right. Excellent work.
All right. Thanks,
Good.
buddy.
For a conversation about the harrowing journey through the Darién Gap, please welcome the Atlantic's Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Caitlin Dickerson and the renowned photojournalist and author Lynsey Addario, with Atlantic editor Scott Stossel.
Well, thank you all for being here. Welcome, you guys. And I want to say that there's that famous quip about JFK said that, like, when he was invited a bunch of artists and intellectuals to the White House, he said, "This is the greatest concentration of intellect in the White House since Thomas Jefferson dined alone." I feel like that I am sitting here with, like, the greatest concentration of journalistic, like, hardcore badassery since, like, Martha Gellhorn and you know. Yeah, Gellhorn and Hemingway went to, you know, World War II, or Orwell to the Spanish Civil War. But so your guys' bravery is sort of astonishing, and yet, you know, you chose to direct it to going to the Darién Gap, and you know, subjecting yourself to all kinds of harrowing circumstances. That is not a decision to be taken lightly journalistically. What was it that, you know, having now done that reporting, that you want people to take away, and we'll get to later what the policy takeaways of this, but what did you see on the ground there that you would like, you know, people in this audience and people who read the article and people who learn about this by other means, you'd like to them to take away from this?
You want me to start?
Okay.
So I've written about immigration for a long time, and I've heard so many people's immigration stories. I feel like pace by pace, I've walked through them in granular detail, and I really felt like I understood what it meant to risk your life to cross borders. And then I got to the Darién Gap and realized there's really no substitute for seeing it with your own eyes. People with babies strapped to their chests and their backs, literally scaling sheer rock walls, climbing up boulders that were wet, that were covered in moss. You know, you put a foot out in front of you and just hope that it's not going to slip and you're not going to fall into the rushing river down below you. And so I think just the sheer physical challenge is something that I think it's important for people to understand. It's part of why I was so glad that Lynsey was there with me, also to help keep me safe, because she's an absolute expert in these sorts of harrowing situations. And so I really wouldn't have done it without you. Lastly, I just want to say, what we heard again and again was that people didn't want to be there, right? It's not people who are making this journey because they can't wait to come and start a new life in America. It really felt like a last resort for almost everyone we spoke to. And many of them had tried to resettle elsewhere before taking this journey. And so, you know, the pictures will show you that's no surprise, but it's really not something that people want to be doing.
Yeah, and I should point out that these are all photos that Lynsey took while they were on their trip, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I think just sort of the varying levels of preparation was also sort of fascinating. You know, there were some people who had literally been physically training in preparation to go across the Darién Gap, which was definitely necessary. And then there were people who sort of just showed up with almost nothing. And of course, it can take longer than you budget. It can take anywhere from a few days to 6 days to 10 days, depending. Some people get lost, some people run out of food, water, and that means you die if you run out of food and water, because people, they help each other to an extent, but really it's everyone for himself at some point, because if you start giving away your last bit of food, obviously, then you have nothing. I mean, at one point, some of the soldiers who were trailing behind us and ahead of us at one point, once we were deep into Panama, and the Panamanian government wanted to make sure that nothing horrible happened to two journalists, half of the soldiers assigned to walk with us dropped out because they couldn't keep up with Caitlin and I. And they started drinking the IV bag full of water because they themselves ran out of food and water. So you can imagine, if you're a soldier working in the Darién Gap and they couldn't keep up, you can imagine what a migrant or a refugee deals with when they're trying to cross.
Yeah, I want to just pause on that and say that, like, the you know, Panamanian military could not keep up with Caitlin and Lynsey. They're, you know, Indiana Jones here. But that also speaks to the pull of immigration to the United States, that these people, you know, these are not, you know, and obviously this is now politicized to an unbelievable degree. But what, you know, the people you met, what was motivating them to take this trip at great risk to their lives, their livelihood, or, well, really their lives, their families' lives?
I think it was this feeling that they had nowhere else to go. I mean, I'll talk about the family who begins the story, and their story continues throughout. Venezuelan husband and wife with 2 children who were 8 years old and 2 years old. And they were from middle-class families. They were college students who planned to become a nurse and an engineer when Venezuela's economy started to falter. They first tried to resettle in Peru, and this is the case again for so many people we met. They moved to Peru, the pandemic hits, and of course there's no work available. The 4 of them slept on a single mattress that they dragged in from the street in a tiny apartment. And the mother was out in a park trying to sell food, which of course Peruvians didn't have money to buy. I mean, their entire economy was shut down. The father tried to work in a restaurant, which didn't have any patrons. He tried to work in driving a truck. I mean, they just weren't able to feed their kids. So that's just one example.
And talking about kids, I mean, you if I may, you have kids who are, if I'm not mistaken, preteen and teenager. Some of these kids are the same age. Like, how did it feel as a photojournalist being there and seeing this and knowing your kids are home back in England, and what does that do to your heart?
Yeah, I mean, that was constantly in the back of my mind. I have a 5-year-old and a 12-year-old, 2 boys. And as I was photographing, these parents, often fathers, hoisting their young children on their shoulders to walk sort of straight up a mountain and hope they didn't slip and fall into a ravine. All I could think about is like, I can't even get my son to soccer practice, like much less cross the Darién Gap, and it was fascinating to me how, ironically, the children they were told it was an adventure. They were going on an adventure with their parents. So they didn't really understand just how dangerous it was, which was, I think a lot of the pressure really fell on the parents naturally, because at every turn, the parents were worried that something would happen.
And some of the hardest moments I think that we observed were when a parent would slip and fall or cry out and say, I can't go on. And then you would see these young children move in to comfort their own parents, not really understanding the context of what was going on, but just being more scared than anything of seeing their own parent pushed to their physical limit.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, walk us through what a would-be immigrant to the United States from India or China or somewhere deep in Latin America goes through to get through. I mean, and the Darién Gap is, why is that the main, kind of point of conduit? Why is it so difficult? And what would someone trying to get through go through as they're trying to get here?
So getting to the Darién Gap is a journey in itself, and one that involves hiring a smuggler. These organizations operate all over the world, and they're actually very easy to access nowadays. You can open up TikTok, open up Instagram, and find them yourselves and book a journey. What you agree to and what actually happens is very different. So people are often told that this journey is going to be completely accessible, that all the supplies you'll need will be made available to you, that it'll happen in a matter of days. One of the mothers who is in my story from Vietnam, she saw a YouTube video advertising a journey like this and thought that she and her 9-year-old son would be able to handle it. She didn't expect they would have to swim. Neither one knew how. She thought they'd be walking on a paved road, and they crossed a river, the same one that we did just a week later, and the river experienced a flash flood, very common. This is one of the wettest places on Earth. And her son was swept away. He didn't make it out of the jungle. So just getting to the Darién Gap is death-defying often. Then we're talking about this narrow stretch of land, the only way to walk north out of South America to get toward the United States. And then eventually you get to Central America and Mexico, where again, many people die, are kidnapped, experience violence, experience extortion. So every step along the way is harrowing.
What was this? I mean, obviously you guys, are embedded with these folks, but you're American. What was, but as a way of kind of conveying something about the risks attendant on anyone trying to traverse the Darién Gap, what was the scariest moment for each of you? Either what you yourself experienced in terms of a mudslide or a snake, or seeing someone you were covering subjected to something awful? I mean, you talked about the Vietnamese child.
I think it was, for me, weirdly, it was the lead up to the Darién Gap, because it was the unknown of like, will I be able to physically make it? You know, I'm 50, I have 3 herniated discs in my back, I have torn meniscus in both knees and a torn ACL. And the entire time I was walking, I was just sort of praying methodically that something wouldn't happen, because of course, if you get injured, there's no one to take you out. It's 100 miles with no roads. And so for me, it was sort of the lead up. And then once we got there, we had the fortune of having porters help us carry our stuff. We had protein bars, we had water filters, we had, you know, hammocks to sleep in, because you have to sleep in hammocks. The ground is too wet often. But even sort of, and at that point, it was all sort of, not adrenaline, but it was really sort of one foot in front of the other for 12 hours a day minimum. And you're sort of in autopilot, you know, but it was the lead up that was really stressful.
How about for you?
That's right. And the random nature, too, right, of what can happen to you in the Darién Gap. So I think there are many moments that come to mind when you ask that question, but one was when we met a woman. She was 58 years old. She was a grandmother walking with her daughter and her 3 grandchildren. She was on the second morning of her trip, and she told us she was going along fine and slipped on some leaves. And so when we met her, she was marooned in the middle of the jungle, and she had a compound fracture and had a bone sticking out of her ankle. She was taking refuge at a camp, one of 2 that existed in the Panamanian jungle at that time. Some other migrants had carried her there. These camps are very controversial because the Panamanian government thinks they're encouraging more migration, and the people who run them think that, you know, they're poor Panamanians who are both making a living and helping to keep migrants safe. And this woman said to us, you know, if this camp hadn't existed, I would have died in the jungle by myself, because she still had many days of walking again. So I think that was a real fear and a wake-up call for me, seeing her, someone who was able-bodied and healthy, and experience this random fate. And it can happen to everybody, I remember, or to anybody rather. I remember right before we left having conversations with our lawyers about how, you know, something like this, if it occurs, it means that you guys are going to have to carry one another out. And are you okay with that? Because we looked into it, you know, there is no medevac option. And that's, of course, the case for every single person taking this journey.
And the snakes. There was
snakes,
we
yeah.
saw one of the most poisonous snakes sort of right off to the side. And I have I'm not a huge fan of the jungle, and I'm terrified of snakes. And so it was very close to us. So
I mean, the editors really zeroed in on that moment when they read it, and the snake was right at our ankles, but the reality is that we were so exhausted when we saw it. It was just sort of, oh, there's something that could kill you, keep walking.
I mean, speak for yourself.
No, I just want to emphasize, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was at least twice that you were sort of outpacing your minders, you know, from whether it was the Panamanian government or whatever officials. They couldn't handle, they were getting sick, they were bailing out, and you got, so all of which, I mean, it speaks to your badassery, but it also speaks to the scope of the dangers here and what these migrants are subjecting themselves to in order to escape, you know, whatever it is that's driving them to migrate to North America.
That's right. The second time we were talking about was when we did a 6-hour hike one day, which was nowhere near the most difficult. We were with some representatives from the Panamanian military, and one guy had to stop and throw up several times along the way. We kept trying to get him to turn back, but...
And he was wearing jeans. And he was wearing jeans and like
Yeah.
all the wrong. I mean, so much of this is preparation and sort of knowledge of like where we're going, situational awareness, what's ahead of us, just making sure we had the right gear. And we spent almost a year or really looking into every single thing. Now that's a luxury, obviously, because if you're a migrant crossing the jungle, you don't have those resources. I mean, there's a lot of word of mouth, but of course things are expensive. I mean, the gear itself was very expensive. Hiring people to help us carry our stuff is a real luxury.
So much of the conversation, you know, particularly in an election season in the United States, takes place at the level of, you know, demagoguery and abstraction and, you know, caravans, and you're down at the level of reality. But, you know, as we sort of climb the ladder to, up to policy, talk about unintended consequences. Like, you know, there are policies implemented by, or sort of proposed both by the United States, but also by Panama, by Colombia, that lead to perverse outcomes. Namely, as I understand it, profiteering by the cartels, who actually do, end up being responsible for keeping the migrants safe, but are also realizing this is a tremendous economic opportunity. So talk a little bit about unintended consequences of various policy changes.
So one of the things that the United States government has tried to do in working with governments throughout Latin America to try to mitigate the flow of migration is to ask that visas be made inaccessible to people coming from countries where the expectation is people will try to eventually get here. And that has worked. Mexico has cracked down, the Latin American governments have cracked down really throughout the continent, with the exception of a couple places, Nicaragua notably, which has now become yet another route people are flying to. But basically, because it's become so difficult to get a visa that would allow you to fly or take a boat to somewhere in Central America, people are going to the few places they can arrive. Guyana is one, Colombia is one, and then walking. And the other thing that results when people are funneled through a place like the Darién Gap is that cartels are eager to get involved and make money in any way that they can. And so in the case of the Darién Gap, prior to all this, really the only human presence you had there were indigenous Panamanian communities that live on the outskirts of the jungle, and then the Gulf Clan, which is the most powerful drug cartel in the country. They've moved for many years drugs and weapons through the jungle, and so they've seen this as a real opportunity and decided to start moving people too. And so it gives you a sense of kind of a logical response to trying to mitigate migration, which is, okay, well, let's make it harder. And then this unintended consequence of criminal groups who move in and see an opportunity to make money.
I mean, you talk, and these indigenous Panamanians, on the one hand, have historically provided like a route, a sort of way station on the way up north. They are also sites of abuse, sexual assault, theft. Talk about that a little bit.
There's an incredibly complicated set of dynamics going on in Panama with regard to indigenous people living there. I mean, they have historically been the most marginalized communities in the country. That maybe comes as no surprise, living in deep, deep, crushing poverty without access to basic health care, without access to running water or electricity, which is why these conditions were as harrowing as they were. And they've also been subjected for many decades to living in the territory where the Gulf Clan frequents and is violent and violently takes over land. And so what's happened over years is that some indigenous Panamanians essentially took up arms to defend themselves, and these have become very violent places. There are indigenous Panamanians who make money off of the migration by operating boats that we rode in at either end of the jungle. And there are some who've turned toward exploiting migrants. And so robbery and even sexual assault are at this point really systematic, a very common risk, which is why the Panamanian government sent minders with us, because there were times when we were in the Darién Gap where every single person we met for days told us that they were robbed, almost at an official checkpoint. I mean, that's how well these operations were set up.
And the women talked about being penetrated literally while the indigenous groups would search their body for money, cell phones, anything they tried to hide to be able to get beyond the Darién Gap, because of course once you leave the jungle you actually need to make it further north. And so almost every woman when we arrived in Bajo Chiquito, which is the end of the trail, would tell these really harrowing, humiliating stories about being either stripped or penetrated by these groups in front of groups of people, and their kids often watching, which was really heartbreaking.
And you've had leaders of these communities ask the Panamanian government for help that has not arrived. And so it's so complex and really requires a lot more resources.
I want to get to how to think about all this and what we do about it. But Lynsey, I think it's fair to say, you are the preeminent photojournalist of conflicts in our time, and you have been, I think, also fair to say, a photographer of every major, conflict of the last 20 years. How does what you saw, on your trip through the Darién Gap compare, in whatever way you choose to think about it, with what you've seen in Iraq, Afghanistan, elsewhere?
I think in war you have sort of all of your emotions and senses are peaked kind of at various moments, whether when you're under fire or when you're at the front line or there are moments, but there are also lulls in war, and there are natural times where sort of you can continue leading your life. And I think with something like the Darién Gap, it was sort of 5 days of hell, 5 days of sort of every day you wake up and you know what's ahead of you. Either you're walking up to your waist in water, you're scaling wet boulders, you're hoping you don't drop your child as you walk, and then you're wondering if you have enough food to make it across, if you're going to run out of water. And I think that, it's sort of like a war condensed, and it's an emotional war and a physical war.
As I was saying, in this, particularly in a presidential political year, the topic of immigration gets demagogued, and people talk about caravan. People specifically Donald Trump talk about caravans and people, criminals and terrorists, and people escaped from mental institutions or what have you. You look at the photos that Lynsey took, and you talk about the stories that Caitlin talks about, and it's families who are desperate to escape dire conditions back home, dangerous conditions back home. Clearly, this is going to it's like water. Whatever you try to put up, the immigration flow will continue. How do we think about this policy-wise? What should U.S. Imagine a President Trump second term or President Kamala Harris first term. What is the right policy solution to reduce suffering, increase well-being, and whatever your position on immigration is, how do you just make this better and smoother?
It's the question I'm asked most often. There are no silver bullets when it comes to solving our immigration issues as a country. I think that often the conversation, though, tends to go back and forth between these extremes, open borders or a wall, which is really unproductive. One of the things that the Biden administration is attempting now is basically a set of policies that assume migration is inherent to life on Earth. It's always existed, and it's exacerbated by conflict. It's now exacerbated by climate change. But people move, people cross borders. And so the thinking is, if we were to open up more legal pathways through, for example, these safe mobility offices that the Biden administration is opening throughout Latin America, where they hope to interview up to 50,000 people this year and approve them in advance for permission to fly directly to the United States. They have parole programs. They've obviously extended temporary protective status according to the conditions in certain countries that have been deemed harrowing enough that people should have access to the United States. The thinking is, if enough legal pathways are made accessible and expediently accessible, because right now things like refugee resettlement and seeking asylum can take 10 or 15 years, then will that discourage people from taking routes like the Darién Gap? That's their hope. And we have seen numbers, as I'm sure you all know, lower at the border right now, but they're unpredictable. I've been watching this issue long enough to know that sometimes they'll shoot up or go down for reasons that have nothing to do with U.S. policy. So the experiment right now is this opening up legal pathways to see if it helps to regularize circumstances at the border, and we'll have to see.
Based on both your respective experiences here, what's the one thing you would want a reader or someone in this audience to take away from what you learned in the Darién Gap?
That's a tough one. I hope you'll read the story.
Do read the story.
One thing I thought about a lot is that it's hard for us as Americans folks who were at least born in the United States, have to ponder what it might take to lead somebody to bring their baby, their very young child, on a journey like this one. And so I think just the logic and the mental process, it becomes difficult for us to relate to. That's why I think it's so important to read stories like this and get to know the circumstances in Venezuela, in Vietnam, China, India, learn the stories of the people that we met, and perhaps that will help lead us to push for policies that take into consideration the reality that people are fleeing, but that also take into consideration our desires for order at the border, which are, of course, reasonable.
In 15 seconds, what do you want people to take away from what you saw at Darién Gap?
Once someone makes a decision they need to leave, they will do it at all costs, and they will take any risks they need to take, and that's really it. You can't just tell them no. They won't. There's no turning back.
Well, thank you, Caitlin and Lynsey. I encourage you all to read this. Thank you very much.
Here to unpack the science of happiness, please welcome Arthur C. Brooks, Atlantic contributing writer and best-selling author, with Crystal Champagne Norwood, executive producer at The Atlantic.
Excited that we're here today to really talk about building a meaningful life.
Thank you, Crystal. Great to be with you, and great to see another wonderful Atlantic Festival here, and to all of our friends out in virtual land.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Me too.
We've talked a lot about the loneliness epidemic,
Right.
and it's pretty well documented. There's a new Pew Research Center poll that said about half of Americans feel too busy to even enjoy life. So I wanted to talk to you about how do we balance those perceived obligations with our shifting priorities.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. It's such a privilege to be able to write weekly about the science of happiness, which is this incredibly exciting and booming area of both neuroscience and behavioral science, which is my own background. As an academic, it's a thrill to write for the best educated popular audience really in the world at The Atlantic. And the reason that I do that is because I have this personal mission as a behavioral scientist to lift people up and bring them together in bonds of happiness and love using science. And this is a perfect example that you're talking about. That's something that a lot of people are struggling with that we haven't seen before. So if you go back in time 20 or 30 years, you don't find this sort of malaise that people feel about all these different areas of their life, often concentrating on a lack of meaning at work. So a lot of people are feeling this. And the truth of the matter is that people aren't actually working harder or working that differently. The problem is not what your job isn't providing to you. The problem is that you're looking for too much in your job for things in your life that you're not getting.
Yeah.
That's generally speaking the case. So what'll happen, for example, is if you don't have enough sustenance in all of your relationships, you'll concentrate it on one relationship and blame that. Like, what's wrong with my marriage? Well, the problem is you don't have any friends, actually, for example. It's like, why don't I find any meaning in my work? Because you don't find any meaning in your life. That's what it comes down to. And so the real crisis is not what's going on in the workplace. The real crisis that we're actually seeing is that people are finding a lot less meaning in life, and they're a lot less likely to be looking for meaning. This is something I'm writing a lot about right now. As a matter of fact, I've got a feature article coming out in the world's greatest magazine in the spring, and then a book in 2026 called The Meaning of Your Life and How to Find It Before It's Too Late. Is that too much of a panicky thing? Maybe I'll take off the before it's too late.
No,
Maybe I'll take that
I
part
think
off.
that's actually on
So that's really what we're looking for, is that we don't have a work crisis, we don't have a business crisis, we have a meaning and purpose crisis.
Well then, okay, sticking with that idea of a meaning and purpose crisis, not to bury or to get ahead of anything, but could you give us maybe just like one or two tips that you think are the way in to finding that purpose, to finding that meaning?
Yeah, so a couple of different ways to think about this. Number one is why. We have to first, what you do, and anything having to do with mental health or wellness is you have to find why are we having the problem, and then you have to define what the thing is you're looking for. So why are we having a problem? And one of the things that we know based on very cutting edge neuroscience is there's a whole body of knowledge that talks about and this sounds esoteric, but it isn't, the hemispheric lateralization of the brain.
What?
Your brain does different things on opposite sides, is what it comes down to. Now, in the old days, you were a creative or an analytic. That stuff's nonsense. That stuff hasn't stood up to time. But we do know that questions of meaning are largely processed in the right hemisphere of the brain. And all the stuff you're doing to be distracted, especially with tech, is mostly governed by the left side of your brain. Now, you know where I'm going with this. We have left sides of our brains that are enormous and pulsating. And the right side of our brains are dying. I mean, obviously this is hyperbolic, but you get the point. People are becoming incompetent at using the right side of their brains, and consequently, they don't know how to adjudicate questions of meaning, and they spend all of their time frittering away all of their energy through the distraction of social media and mediating the relationships through dating apps and all of these things that won't let you get over to the part of your brain that you actually need for meaning. So what's the meaning then? And the answer to that is that meaning is really a combination of three things that we need. A sense of the coherence of why things happen in our lives, a sense of purpose, which is goals and direction, and a sense of significance, why our lives matter. And when we start digging into those huge questions, which is incredibly uncomfortable and even weird after so many years of not being there, geographically not being there in our brains, then suddenly the wheels start to turn and life starts to change. And that's what I want. I want a meaning revolution, but that's going to take a whole lot of changes in our lives.
It feels heavy.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's so good though. You know, it's quite interesting. You know, when people ask me, you know, how do you find meaning? I say, put down your phone.
Yeah.
Or burn it. And go on a long walk and look for your soul. But this is not something esoteric. This is basically just get to the right side. Look at the complexity of life is what it comes down to. And the more uncomfortable it is, the better.
It feels privileged to be able to put down the phone and walk away or really disconnect. I don't know. I am struggling with that too. Busyness here. This whole festival was not easy to put together, but also raising kids and all. There's a lot that happens in life. I just would love maybe just like one or two things that, if you aren't able to put the phone down and unplug and stuff, like what are some things? Is it journaling? Is it living in gratitude? Say yes for a year to things. I don't know.
Well, there are zones in your life that must not be mediated by technology. It's incredibly important that we all recognize that we have brains that were evolved to accommodate life in the Pleistocene. We don't have brains that are accommodated to be able to maintain a level of involvement in the level of busyness that comes from everything coming across the screen. That's not normal. We're not evolved to do that. And so the result is you need a break. Everybody who's having a lot of anxiety and sadness and emotions that they can't quite understand, they all get better when you have unmediated, when you have zones of your life that are not mediated by these relatively unnatural means. Everybody needs a break. That's the reason that you shouldn't, okay, to be practical, don't sleep in the same room as your phone. So if you wake up in the night, you don't look at it. Don't look at your device for the first hour that you're awake, if you can actually do that. And by the way, everybody can.
Yeah.
Everybody can actually do that. And make sure that on the weekends you have serious amounts of time only with humans and not actually with devices. The problem isn't devices. The problem is our brain, is what it comes down to. We're not living in the right world for the kind of brain that we have at this point. And that's disequilibrating us in all sorts of ways that we're just barely starting to understand.
Yeah. Sticking with the idea of being with people, and earlier you were saying your marriage isn't the problem. You don't have enough friends. I do want to talk about that because you and I, we've talked about living a relationship-centric life, and there was this Harvard study that assessed the connection between people's habits and their subsequent well-being since the late 1930s, and they found that stable relationships are among the most important predictors of late life happiness. So I would love for you to kind of talk about how we're like the relationship between meaningful lives and having friends and loving relationships. And then I'd even ask you to go a step further and give us some tips for making friends in adulthood. I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. No, I hear you. And the truth is that I know that on this stage you've had Vivek Murthy, the great Surgeon General of the United States, who's talking about loneliness. He wrote about loneliness. He says it's our #1 public health crisis, which is quite a thing to say when you were there as their Surgeon General during COVID. I mean, it's a much bigger, longer-term deal is the way that this works, which is weird because, we were promised a few years ago that all the new technology was going to make friendship easier and we were going to find all the people in our lives, we're going to have all these sorts of connections, but no. Something happened.
Yeah.
And we're just starting to understand exactly what the problem with that is. Now, the study you're talking about is called the Harvard Study of Adult Development, and that started with college juniors or college sophomores in 1938, 1939 at Harvard. So this is not exactly a representative sample, all guys going to Harvard in the late 1930s. It was then paired with a sample of people who didn't go to college, mostly working class people in the Boston area, and then it started to spread geographically, and then it includes spouses, and then it included kids, and now it's representative geographically, socioeconomically, racially. It's a very representative sample, and it's been following these cohorts of people from their teenage years until death because it's been going on for 85 years. And it's like a crystal ball. Sorry. It was the, her name is Crystal. That was
Yeah, that's where
it's like,
we got it.
Yeah, some of them got it. Some of them were like, ha, ha.
My husband got it.
Yeah. So it's a look into your future. What did the people who died happy and well, what did they do earlier in life? Now, some of it's luck. Like, congratulations, your parents weren't depressed or something like that, right? But there's 7 things that the people all did who made it to old age healthy and, more importantly, happy. So obviously, you want to know what that is. 4 of them were pretty obvious. It was smoking, drinking, exercise, and diet. Okay, so don't smoke because you'll die. And drinking, they're very, very hardcore, the researchers are in drinking. And the new research, by the way, and don't shoot the messenger here, but the new research really says that the only safe level of drinking is less than 2 drinks a week. That's what the new research is telling us. And I know, it's like, yeah, get this guy out of here.
No.
But one of the reasons they talk about this in the Harvard Study of Adult Development, because it's the biggest predictor of the dissolution of close relationships, is the misuse of substances. So they would have had other drugs in the sample, but in the late 1930s, there wasn't all that much cannabis floating around. So, but it's intoxicants. It's the use of intoxicants ruins your relationships. Why? Because, not because of your health, but because it substitutes for your relationships. That's the thing. Some of you are sober after bad problems with addiction. Some of you, I know that, the data, there's enough of you, that's got to be the case. And you look back on it and you're like, yeah, that crowded out my relationship with God, that crowded out my relationship with my kids, that crowded out and finally you said, I can't stand to be so lonely, and that's why you got sober. But if you don't, you're not going to be happy by the end to answer your question with the relationships. Second is, the whole idea of taking care of yourself, not with crazy yo-yo diets or insane exercise regimens, but really taking care of yourself so that you can live a longer, better life. Okay, then the big 3 that are pretty interesting are, number 1, all of the happy, healthy people in old age had a way to take care of their stress, anxiety, and the problems of life. They had a technique. Some of them were meditators. Some of them were religious believers and had a strong relationship with the divine. Some of them were in psychotherapy. But they all had a thing. They had a way that they were good at to take care of life's problems. Because life, to quote the Buddha, is suffering. It's hard. It's hard. If your life isn't hard, then you're not alive, basically. I say this as a happiness scientist. As an unhappiness specialist, basically. The second is that they're lifelong learners. They're learning. They're reading books. They subscribe to The Atlantic. That's the secret.
Thank you.
And last but not least, the biggie. If you forget everything else, this is the big one. Happiness is love, full stop.
Yeah.
So they had either or both of close friendships or a close marriage, and ideally both. Now, not everybody gets both, but almost everybody can, if they do the work, have close friendships, even if a close marriage, a warm marriage, a good marriage actually is unavailable to them. You can still have close friendships, and that's really the key. And that's what's getting harder in a life that's being mediated by screens.
Yeah.
It's so weird, you know, and now we even understand the physiology of that. There's a neuropeptide in the brain that functions as a hormone that we all know about at this point called oxytocin. Oxytocin mediates human relationships vis-a-vis eye contact and touch, right? Exactly what you don't get through social media. Exactly what you don't get through Zoom, what you don't get through FaceTime. If you're making convenient life choices that isolates you from fellow human beings, you're going to say, I don't know, it's like I can't sleep right. I feel kind of restless. You know, I feel like drinking more. That's because you don't have enough oxytocin. Your blood oxytocin levels are insufficient. You got the monkey on your back. Something not right is what it comes down to. And that's what's going on with us. And so the answer to all of this basically comes down to you need more eye contact and touch. If I could do one thing with my students who are on average 28 years old, they're MBA students at Harvard, I would have more eye contact and touch, more eye contact and appropriate touch. That's what I would have.
My husband's an attorney. He would definitely be like, appropriate touch.
Yeah, that's right.
I wanted to stick with that last point there with the love being the main piece. I saw a recent interview you gave, and it talked about, you said there's a new formula for happiness.
Yeah.
Love people, use things, and worship God. You and I talk a lot about how much we love the Lord, and we've talked about relationships, we've talked about the money and the work and using things. But I wanted to spend some time here on the divine, the transcendence,
Right.
the worshiping of God, because I came across another research. I knew I was coming with a social scientist. I had to have my data. And I found that 29% of Americans, they identify as not having any
Right.
beliefs. So I'd love for you to really talk to me about the connection between faith and happiness.
Right. You know, I'm a practicing Catholic. It's literally the most important thing in my life. And when I was younger, when I was a young man, people would complain that the real problem with the Catholic faith was the nuns, right? Because, you know, bad experiences in elementary school and all that. Now it's the nuns, N-O-N-E-S, which is no religion, which is literally a category in the census. What's your religious affiliation? None. The year I was born in the mid-'60s, it was 1% of the population. Now it's used to be 29%.
29.
My data say 34% of the population has no religious affiliation. Now, is it a problem? As a Catholic, I'm like, yeah. But as a scientist, I can say not necessarily. That's not the problem. The problem for happiness is not the lack of religious affiliation, it's the lack of a sense of the transcendent. So you gave this formula. Mother Nature and the marketing colossus of modern society gives you a formula for happiness that's a complete lie. And it makes perfect sense because we're a kin-based hierarchical tropical species, we Homo sapiens. And some of that we can get beyond. Like I live in, you know, cold places because we've developed a technology called coats. And I can do that, but I can't get beyond the kin-based hierarchical species. I can't get beyond that, and that's really how we're wired. And so the way that we rise in the hierarchy is through greater prestige and the admiration of other people, and that means that Mother Nature is telling us if you want to be happy, you need to rise. And the way that you rise is by accumulating and loving stuff more than you need, using people for your gratification and advancement, and worshiping yourself because you're the star in your psychodrama. It's like me, my job, my lunch, my commute, my money, the shows I watch on TV, me. It's so boring. It's just so tedious. But I can't stop thinking about it all day long. How do you get around this mistaken formula? It's by kind of changing the verbs and nouns around, and that's what you just stated.
Yeah.
The right formula scientifically to be a happier person is to use things with joy and abundance. Love people, because only people can be loved, and to worship the divine as you understand that. That doesn't mean you're religious, by the way. Yeah. That simply means you have a sense of the transcendent of something bigger than you, and that really gets to the crux of your question here. What is it about people who have a sense of the transcendent? They're not necessarily religious or even spiritual. They stand in awe of something bigger than them, that is the universe, which is axiomatically bigger than you. And you feel little, and that littleness gives you peace and perspective that you crave. You can't be truly happy unless you're little, is what it comes down to. That's what the research suggests, but I bet you that some of you are going, yeah, if I don't stand in awe, forget about it. Because life is boring. Life is like watching the same episode of Better Call Saul over and over and over and over again. It's a good show, but twice is enough, let alone every day of your life. So So how do you do that? And that's what I've done a lot of research into. You can, if you want, I'll give you some examples. You can, if you want that transcendence, you can study the Stoic philosophers with seriousness and try to live what they say. You can take a walk an hour and a half before dawn. That's called the Brahma Muhurta in ancient Vedic teaching. In Sanskrit, that means the creator's time. And there's a lot of research that shows that you're acutely aware. And there's no device in your hand or your pocket, and you can just hear the crunch of the gravel under your feet as you walk on a trail. You can study the fugues of Johann Sebastian Bach and marvel at the saint that he was. You can start a Vipassana meditation practice, which I've studied extensively and strongly recommend. You can practice the faith of your youth, which you and I have chosen to do. And that gives you a sense of your littleness and that and meets that craving that you need. Jeff Goldberg was here someplace, who's our editor. He and I were in the Himalayas in April with the Dalai Lama. We were doing a conference together with the Dalai Lama on the subject of transcendence, talking about this and the unique experiences that you simply can't access, neurophysiologically can't access, if you don't actually take on if you don't practice something that makes you small.
I feel small thinking about just being out here on the stage. It really did put me in awe and put me in a transcendent place. Arthur, I want to thank you so much for your time with us today. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us too as well. Thank you.
Please welcome back The Atlantic's Tyler Watson.
What an incredible session. Thank you so much to our speakers, and I hope you really enjoyed what you heard today. You can continue to support The Atlantic by becoming a subscriber. For more information about activating your subscription or providing The Atlantic as a gift, please visit us at the information or check-in desks. At 2:30 p.m., actress, playwright, professor, and Atlantic contributor Anna Devere Smith will read scenes from her stage play, This Goes to Slavery, right here on the Ideas stage. We hope to see you for that performance. Please refer to the festival agenda for the full, complete schedule of events today.